Okay, welcome back to Thrive in the Future. This week I have Lindsay Brandon from Permaculture Canada. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you very much for having us here. Me
Sure.
and Armagarden, there's two of us.
Oh, great. So
Yeah.
give a little bit of background about yourself and also Permaculture Canada.
Yeah, you bet. So my name is Lindsay Brandon. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, and that's where I'm based out of. I'm currently running two companies from here, one of them being Permaculture Canada. And it is an outward moving company, we'll say. I'm going to give you a little bit of the story behind the background of what these companies mean so that, yeah, you can kind of understand the context. So Permaculture Canada is this one here. It's a
Excellent.
feminine based energy. I would consider it an outward moving energy. So, the focus of Permaculture Canada is more the ecosystem restoration, working with watersheds, working with organizations, outward moving sort of energy. So, it's more like a collective ideology that we're working with there. The second company is Armagarden, and it is inward moving energy, more masculine. So it's more about people that want to really focus on their homestead. So it's more about, my home, my community, my family, and taking care of my land. So they are polar opposites. And I wanted to kind of cover all those bases with the permaculture solutions that we have based on what sort of energy field that they fit into. So both of the companies are intertwined. We have 9 designers on the team, and we're based all the way from Nicaragua up to Canada. And yeah, we do online design as well as, site visits and consulting as well, dependent on the geographic areas of the designers themselves. And yeah, we're doing education and opening up the doors on how we can offer permaculture solutions based on what's being asked out there in the world.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like your site, permaculturecanada.world. I like your projects that you have on there. Those are really neat. I especially like the farmhouse, and give a little background about some of the projects you have on there.
Yeah, so the farmhouse is in the Gatineau area, and it's more about education and a schoolhouse. So I actually was involved in doing about 15 permaculture demonstration sites over the past couple of years, all with their, unique focus because everybody has a different reason for doing this sort of thing. So that farmhouse one, was more about children and about education and weaving in the young to the old and bringing back, elders into that education sphere with things like storytelling and whatnot to share with the children. But bridging that gap between the children and the elders is such an important piece of, healing the world out there and providing opportunity for both children to connect with their elders, but also elders not to be so isolated. So that's a really beautiful aspect of that project. Other ones that are on there is the garden compound in Santa Fe in the old town, which was amazing, working with real veterans in the permaculture industry. They've already had this permaculture oasis for many years. So it was really just going in there and seeing, how can we even jack this up even more, which was, a phenomenal challenge and a really exciting thing to do. And I find like each project that I do definitely opens me up into different ways of presenting this type of work.
Hmm.
People are coming at it from different parts in the game, right? So sometimes there's a whole orchard on the site that needs to be mapped in order for us to figure out how to fill in the gaps. So that was kind of a scenario with that garden compound project where it was like, you can see a video map on there where I've got time code because I'm working with other collaborative designers while I do this, right? I'll create the concept and I'll create the framework and then collaborate with other designers to really detail in the pieces. So if I'm the one that's doing the site visit, I'm taking a lot of video footage, drone photography, LiDAR images, and things like that to give them a sense of what it's like on the ground so that we can collaborate in a way that makes sense 3 dimensionally and 2 dimensionally as well.
Hmm.
Other ones that are on there, I got the Modern Homestead on there. That was a TV show that I did last year. Yeah, last year in June. Had a whole bunch of Texas projects last year in June as well. Got to go out to Corpus Christi and
Wow.
over to San Antonio. And, we were doing food bank projects and we were doing restoration projects on places that were compacted by, previous racetrack kind of thing, a horse racetrack where we have to do a lot of remediation, because they've got these spiny plants trying to keep people off the land to restore itself. And Yeah, so there's been a ton of projects. I've done over 35 different projects on a smaller scale as well, over 200 acres of design in total, and just keeps going. I was just last week on a site visit close to where I am by Edmonton for a community project, which is really exciting. With Permaculture Canada, I'm really focusing more on creating bioregional relationships
Hmm.
because previously I was running a design team based out of Florida. And there was 40 designers on the team there. They were all over the world, and so were the projects, right? Which was phenomenal. I got to learn so much about plant hardiness zones and working in different, with demographics of people and just different climates, that I hadn't designed in before. So it was excellent in that regard. But there was a deep longing in me to say, if I'm showing up with permaculture in the world, I need some more bioregional relationships. I need to know who's close to me. And then when I started doing that digging work of, who's out there in Western Canada, I started to notice how fragmented it seemed. It's
Hmm.
like, well, all these people, I like, want to weave a web between everybody so that we know of each other's presence and, can cross reference each other because permaculture is a very broad subject, right? And
Sure.
for you to go at it alone, sure you can, but I feel like it's something that's much better with community and, with that collaboration over competition mindset so that you're really, you're finding experts in the field for very specific elements of your design and whatnot.
Right. So
Yeah.
along those same lines, how do you go from Canada to Texas and then incorporate that? It's a different biome, it's a different whole different climate and everything else. How do you engage the local folks to help you on your design and everything else?
Yeah, really that actually falls more into the design team
Hmm.
and their location and their specificity, right? With what plants that they're comfortable with and aware of and they know about. I'm able to put myself in any landscape and understand the patterns and the details that are being, dictated by the landscape before me and you know, I'm able to notice what are the pioneer species that are going to tell me about the soil content and what's going on there. And I can read the water, I can read the wind, I can, see the different sectors that we need to assess. And essentially, that permaculture perspective, that overview of the relationships is something that just crosses all borders, right? This is the language of the land. So when it comes to the details about the plant choices and whatnot, I'll go to, somebody who's specifically closer to that area and collaborate with them, right? And not try to be the pro about everything, right?
Oh,
And a
yeah.
lot of times I do. I show up on site and people think I know every single plant out there and it's not the truth. And I love learning. And ever since I was a small child, I wanted to be one of those people that could walk around and be like, that's that plant, and you can use it for this and whatnot. And I never did go into horticulture, but I find that each experience that I have, I'm learning a little bit more, and it's a little bit a smoother, slower integration process.
That's great. So you and I were on Cormac's Vine Permaculture podcast a couple weeks ago, and I know both Cormac and I'm seeing folks that are getting concerned about the tough times, and they're wanting to have food forest and have more resilience and self-sufficiency. I had a doctor um, through a friend contact me and wants me to do a food forest design for his rural property around here. So are you seeing those kind of new contacts and new folks reaching out for those kind of reasons?
I'm seeing a big push towards community aspect projects. So
Mm,
maybe not so much where it's the self-reliant, where it's just one person, perhaps considering their needs. I'm seeing where there's a few individuals that want to care for their entire community.
mm,
So I'm
okay.
seeing where there's real leaders in their communities, and these people, they're and there's multiple groups of them. It's not just a one scenario situation. One beautiful thing that I find is that they're often a couple, and they're often very deeply in love and have like the best sense of humors. So this is like a congruent pattern that I'm finding in these couples, these like power couples all over the place that are like, we want to do this for our community. We know that we have the means to do it. We feel like it's our duty to do it. We want to do it for our communities. So it's a very selfless act. Um, it's really beautiful to watch. It's a really good thing to see that they understand that the community aspect and having that in place beforehand is almost completely essential to the success of it.
Hmm.
Because you can go ahead and create a design and whatnot, but creating the communities is the piece that's going to take much longer, right? Being able
Right.
to have all those different skill sets, right? And you talk about preparedness in food, but of course we know it goes like way beyond that, right? Like with the water storage and things like that, and off-grid energy and redundancy and having all those different skill sets is super important. So pooling your resources, resource management, time management, skill share, these are all the sorts of things that are really come up through these community projects.
Yeah, that's encouraging because instead of seeing the I'm going to withdraw to my bug out property or my prepper enclave, then folks are starting now to think more about community, because that was something that everybody was interested in community until at the beginning of COVID, and then that kind of waned. So it's encouraging to see people starting to get encouraged about that again.
Yeah, and like you can do it either way, right? Like it's to each his own and what they're comfortable with and whatnot. But I think ultimately, if you're, it's one thing if you're on your own and you're a trapper in the woods.
Hmm.
It's another thing if you have a family, right? And something happens to mom or dad or whatnot. So
Sure.
having other people just in terms of, being able to support each other and support each other's families, and not even an emergency situation, but say you want to go on vacation or whatnot, and then you can have one of those families maybe take care of your chickens or something like that, and
Oh yeah.
and then trading, right? So you can really cut down on your costs by creating your own bartering systems and whatnot within your community. So if you have all these other people that are involved, you're going to have access to a lot more equipment, a lot more resources, and all that sort of thing. So if you're going to do it on your own, you can do it for very little. We've got people up here in Canada living off, $100 a month, living on crown land. Like, go ahead, fill your boots. It's to each their own, no judgment there. It's just like, what are you after, and what are you trying to achieve, and what are you starting with?
That's great. So how does Armagarden fit in there, and how does it differ from Permaculture Canada and some of the other projects you've been working on?
Yeah, Armagarden was definitely influenced by a trip that I had to Kansas going down to the Midwest Preparedness Festival. That's really, even the word was born on those festival grounds. So
Hmm.
I was there in June this year to do a talk, and I was really blown away by the responsiveness of the crowd. I'm a performer by nature, and I'm an artist, and a little bit out there at times. I don't know if you can tell, but anyways, and I got up there and I just started singing a song. Right, that's sometimes how I'll like crack my code in terms of like breaking into being comfortable in a crowd, is just throw something random out there just to get my beans out, and then carry on with my talk. Um, and I started bringing in some pretty ethereal, energetic concepts into what I was talking about. I'm quite a spiritual person myself, and, I hesitated a little bit thinking about maybe I shouldn't, go there. But then, of course, I'm just like, no, just be who you are, just do your thing. And
Sure.
I did. And it was really well received. I really felt like I had the attention of the audience. I had an hour and a half of people lining up asking questions afterwards. And I was really, really thrilled. I knew I was with an audience who already got the homesteading bit, right? And
Hmm.
already understood that. So there's that certain level of understanding of where I'm at. But then it's like, well, then we bring in the permaculture perspective. And maybe that wasn't necessarily there, that weaving between elements, the stacking functions, that sort of thing. So I found like they're ready for the information completely, understood it, grasped it completely. But I could see lights going on in
Hmm.
the crowd and whatnot. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I was just sitting down then having a conversation with Tag Meyer there, and Graham Towerton, who's the COO with Permaculture Canada. And I don't know how the conversation started, but the word just came to my mind. I'm like, that's what it is. This is the model that where we're creating for, you know, coming from the preparedness mentality as well, right? So, you know, there's some strategic defense sort of things in there, and then there's, you know, emergency preparedness in terms of medicine and how we plant those gardens,
Hmm.
right? And how we can have a little bit more of a pharmacy growing on our property. And then all those redundancy things that I was talking about too, you know, the water storage is super important. The soil remediation is super important. But uh, I'm creating it more of a model for, you know, somebody's property. Whereas with Permaculture Canada, it's more of like a demonstration site for others to educate outwards, right?
Hmm.
So that's the difference. Where Armagarden's going to have all those other things, and I don't want to let you know all my secrets right off the bat. But you know, there's ways that we can create perimeters on our properties, we'll say, and there's certain ways that we look at the numbers of things and how we quantify things in terms of coming from a preparedness model instead of, you know, a permaculture Canada model where it's like this is how we can create abundance over here, but it's not as quantified, right? It's not as uh, centered onto a specific person or group or property itself.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. So looking at the site for Armagarden, it is more it seems more community focused than the Permaculture Canada model, and it's actually in your description it sounds both the sort of the inverse, right?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I would say I would sway people towards the Armagarden model if that's what they're looking for, that
Hmm.
eco community project. It
Right.
is more of that sort of process. The processes are very similar in terms of the types of investigation I would have to do, geological research, site visits, questionnaires, finding the information from the people, you know, what really drives them, what inspires them, what's their why. These are all really important
Yeah.
questions. And you know, often when I start working with people, they're just like, ah, like kind of godsmacked with all the questions. Oh, I haven't considered that, right? And there's
Hmm.
a lot to consider, right? So the process, as we go through the process of, you know, first is the site visit guaranteed. You know, I've already talked with the people once before the site visit has happened. Sometimes I've already had an hour consultation and given them the questions ahead of time. But even then, the more we discuss, the more that, you know, as you get to know people, the more information is revealed, and that's really where my gift is kind of identifying through people's messaging what's important to them, and then also being the bridge into what the land is dictating to me and what is it saying, you know, in terms of placement of structures, in terms of availability of water and all of that. So I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of a catalyst of communication between the two,
Sure.
you know, to speak from what I'm seeing on the land and let the people know and seeing what their vision is, and then seeing, okay, how it's not a compromise, it's a unification. How do we create a unification so that it feels good for both parties?
Hmm. Yeah, the water and the soil would be very important for a Kansas site. I think we talked about this. There's like we don't have April showers bring May flowers in Kansas. We have May and June thunderstorms, and then a lot of dry in between.
Yeah, you got a lot of check dams to slow down that rain. You know, sometimes you got to do hugelkultur and things like that to plant into because of the clay content in certain areas and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah,
So,
and super duper clay. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Oh yeah, that's the bane of my existence is the clay. So I have to bring in lots of organic matter and things and build them up.
Yeah, microbiology and biochar.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny. Dig down in the clay. There's no worms, and
The-
then have to layer out and with wood chips and things, and then after a while, then it starts looking pretty good.
yeah, yeah, it's great. Well, and it's good for ponds, right? So, you know, there's always how do we make it to our benefit? You know, if we don't
Oh
have a
yeah,
clay problem, we have a clay abundance. Okay, let's make a bunch of ponds.
yeah. So you don't have to put a clay liner in a pond because
Right?
it's already clay. That's funny.
Tamp it down. We have nothing but sand out here, right? Good luck. Good
Uh-huh.
luck getting water to stay anywhere.
So instead of Armageddon, it's Armagarden.
Armagarden, yeah. I think it speaks, volumes to what it is. I think
Hmm.
garden is a common term that people understand is somewhere where you get food. And the whole Armageddon concept, that's pretty shoved down our throats right now. So I thought it was a nice twist on the word itself and where we are at this stage in humanity. And it's like Armageddon, like we can turn that message around. We have a lot of a really negative, fearful messaging and whatnot. And sure, I'm not ignorant to it, but how can we see something in a better world out of it? And really, my life personally had a huge 360, and I feel blessed for it. I feel better off for it.
Explain how.
Well, I had 15 years in the fitness industry. I was doing yoga and Zumba and kickboxing and personal training, and I was performing and doing lots of arts and music, and it was super fun, and I really enjoyed it. But there was a limit. I've already been doing it for 12 to 15 years. I was ready for a change, right? I feel like I was probably in a comfortable place where I probably wouldn't made the change unless I was forced out of it. And really, I was handed my pink card here from the city of Calgary March 12th, and shutdown wasn't even until March 15th, and they're already handing me my pink slip. Go get your EI. You're laid off. It's like, what's going on? It's funny how they knew, but
Hmm.
anyways, it put me in a place where I started to say, okay, I've had a good, 12-year chunk here. It's time for a change. That's just me as a person. I don't like to, stay in one box for a super long time. It's pretty long for
Right.
me. And I knew that I wanted to do something else. I was still pretty young, and I just thought, well, this can't be my career for life. What am I going to do next? And I thought, well, if this is the way the world is heading, where are the farmers at? I want to get my hands back in the dirt because I know that's what makes me happy. I've been gardening since I was a child. I had my own landscaping businesses when I was pregnant with my first, who was now 21 years old. So, I was doing that kind of work because I knew it satisfied my soul. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be around plants, right? I wanted to just be able to like be my own boss and, make things look great. Cause at that time, I was doing more landscaping for like rich people and their beautiful flower gardens and whatnot. So I have a background in the arts as well. I was a sculpture major and did a lot of photography and whatnot. So like the artistic aesthetic is really what I was after. And deadheading flowers as a pregnant lady was awesome. Like this is great work. So when all that BS happened, I was like, well, this is an opportunity for me to delve deeper into that. And I had already learned about permaculture, over 17 years ago because I was working at Calgary's only eco store, which sold, housing products, and no VOC paints and alternative uh, like countertops and whatnot. And we were doing projects with hempcrete and things like that. But I'd never taken a design certification about it. So I thought, I think I'm gonna go take that, and just see what else, because it started to look like the content was a little bit deeper than my understanding, and it absolutely was, and it really was a paradigm shift to take that PDC because the first thing you learn is about witnessing those patterns in nature, and that was a good hook for me because I was like, yeah, I get this. I already feel this deep relationship with the natural world, and I just thought, yeah, this is definitely something that I'd like to do more of and learn more about, especially like the water. I've been doing art about water for 25 years. I've been doing videos and sculptures and projections and glass blowing and everything with this liquid focus. It's definitely one of my most interested topics, we'll say. My deepest topics that I'm fascinated. I feel like we haven't even touched the surface of what water is. And as a tangent, Gerard Pollock is going to be at a Myco Fest that I'm going to be presenting at the end of September. He wrote The Fourth Phase of Water. If you haven't looked that up, I highly recommend
Wow.
checking that out. He's
Yeah,
going to
I'll
be
have to
one
look
of
at
the
that.
speakers at MycoFest this year. So I'm going to be speaking at that festival. I can't believe it. So, anyways, I
Good.
totally
Where's
went
that
on
at?
tangent there. That is in Molino, Oregon. It's put on by
Hmm.
Peter McCory. He is the author of Radical Mycology.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'll be doing a talk on intro to permaculture there, September 26th to 29th in Molino, Oregon.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
getting my I'll be doing my PDC over the winter time. It's too easy to do type 1 errors in Kansas.
Yeah. That's
It's like,
awesome.
okay, that's a little too far away from the water and things. So, yeah.
Where are you going to take your PDC?
Thinking about Midwest permaculture.
Okay,
So,
cool.
and but I haven't decided yet. But
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
I've been taking the permaculture business design course with Jason Thomas, Regeneration Nation in Costa Rica.
Cool.
So, and want to get to the point where I have a more perfect day than just getting yelled at work.
I hear you. That is definitely something to strive towards, you know, like I've gotten pretty far away from a regular lifestyle, we'll say. Actually being encouraged to write a book on how I do my life because I really push outside the box in terms of, you know, and this is another thing I can thank that old story for is that I redefine things and everybody is starting to question things and redefine things. And for
Sure.
myself, you know, I have very strict parameters on how much screen time I'm going to have and where that's going to be. Right. So yesterday
Hmm.
I took my iPad out and I hotspot on my phone and I went out to Gap Lake in the mountains and I brought my paddleboard and I did, you know, 4 hours of computing, but sitting in a park bench in the mountains and then jumping on my paddleboard for a break, right? So I started to notice that the more I took care of my own personal needs, my health as well, you know, with doing things that are active and being outside and doing things that fuel my soul, the better I operated, right? I've started to get better ideas. I was more efficient when I was working at my desk because I knew it was like just over there, you know, tomorrow I'm going to go gather water in the mountains and I'm going to work on a patio somewhere, right? So like blowing those ideas of how to be employed in the world is something that I've practiced my whole life. I've been an entrepreneur. I've done 11 startups. So I'm not
Wow.
really used to depending on other people, you know, in terms of like bringing in my income or knowing where the next check is from. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's just
That's
part of
great.
the way it is. You know, I went to high school where it was credits. You had to sign in, teach
Hmm.
yourself the school, sign out, right? And
Hmm.
I would do, you know, every 3 weeks I'd stay home, do a whole bunch of work, and then the majority of the time I spent in coffee shops and playing hacky sack and stuff. But I was able to get it done, right? It taught me time management. It taught me how to be an entrepreneur from a very young age. So I think it served me well.
Oh, that's great. Good. So how can folks contact you?
Yeah, at permaculturecanada.world is our main website, and Armagarden is currently running through there until I, you know, have the time just to split them up and whatnot. But we're relatively fresh as a company before I was Food Forest Canada, so I've rebranded and incorporated as well. You can find me there. You can find me. I have a Rumble channel called Regen Life. So I'm putting a lot of my videos of all my tours that I'm doing are going to be up there. It's also on YouTube at Permaculture Canada. The handle at Permaculture Canada you can find on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And same with Armagarden, but it's armagarden.world. You can find that also on Instagram and on whatever,
Great.
LinkedIn, all over social media. Yeah. It's kind of like
That sounds
that's
good.
that's a big job in itself, right? It's keeping up with that stuff.
Yeah, it really is, especially Instagram. So very good. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Take
Thank
care.
you. You too. Take care.